Hey Hallowmaniacs, it's Steph here, and welcome to Waukesha Antique Mall. So this is actually my first time visiting the Waukesha Antique Mall in Wisconsin, and I figured I'd take you along with me. So let's go find some vintage Halloween. Alright, so almost made it into Milwaukee from Detroit, and I do love taking that flight because you get to fly over Lake Michigan, and on a pretty sunny day, that lake just shines bright. So this was my first time visiting the Waukesha Antique Mall, and let me tell you, this place was pretty big. It's over 8,000 square feet with 100 different antique booths. So the shop is located right off of Racine Avenue and not that hard to get to. But once going into it, I just saw that it's a lot bigger than what I thought it was on the outside. And that brought pure joy to my heart because I was looking for some Halloween treasures. So this first item was a treasure to my heart indeed because I fell in love with it at first sight. It is a 2001 folk art pollywogs, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, pollywogs, but there's this brand that I kind of researched into, and they specialize in kind of that vintage looking Halloween and with that folk art appeal. So definitely love that, and just kind of looking around more at this vendor's booth that they had, there's definitely some more pollywog items. And they hold their value. Looking at them, they would go anywhere from 40s, 50s, and I even saw some at different vendors actually went even higher than that. Even so, I'm glad I found these, and I may not be too familiar with them, but it definitely gives me and Joe something to look out for when we're shopping at antique booths. So moving down further in the same aisle, I found another booth that actually had some more of the pollywogs. And here looking at it, I love the little creepy jack-o'-lantern faces. They each have a personality of their own. This is interesting. I found just like the black cat bucket that we saw earlier. Here's one with the jack-o'-lantern, and this one was for $39.99. They had some little tiny figures here. I like how they labeled it 1-inch pollywog pumpkinhead child, and for $19.99. And then here they had as well as the skull bucket too. So definitely like looking at these, and I can see how it would be addicting to fill a curio cabinet or a shelf space with all these. And look at that witch there. I mean, there's a lot of detail into this, and the Raggedy Ann and Andy, those were really cute. But yeah, so much to look at. If you by chance collect the pollywogs, definitely one, let me know if I'm saying it correctly, but two, also which ones are your favorites? Which ones do you have? I would love to hear maybe when you collected them, or which ones that maybe you're looking out for. Yeah, this place definitely had some long aisles, and I love this vendor. I'm always looking for different antique books, especially if it's pertaining to anything Halloween or horror related, as well as the vinyl records. This person here must have been a Stephen King collector because I've never seen so many different Stephen King books all in one place. And I mean, they just had novel after novel. So if you are a Stephen King fan, definitely check out this antique mall because they probably have something that you are looking for or something that you can add to your own collection. So this next book caught my eye just based on the cover art here, but it's a book by Vic Krum or Crum. I'm not sure how you say it, but it's a scholastic book, and it was printed in 1975, and it's a story about children that kind of go into this house here, and they start to hear a ghost voice and have to solve a mystery, or they are left stuck in the house forever. Sounds like it could be a good book to curl up to a fire and read, right? It was priced at $4, had a little bit of wear and tear, and then upon opening it, you could definitely see there was some water damage. So next up, I found a piece that was done by Joanna Parker. And for those that don't know, and I'm not too familiar with her myself, but she is actually a folk artist that specializes in bringing back that nostalgic feeling with vintage Halloween. She was actually born on Halloween herself and will often use a lot of bright colors and create a lot of those vintage inspired items. And for those of you that are 90s kids, you'll probably remember waking up on the weekend in the mornings and watching the Beetlejuice cartoons. I know I sure did. So these next two items were really cool, just reminiscent of the 90s and the Beetlejuice cartoon that they had. Next, I found some of the Munsters. These are NECA action figures, and I think these are relatively new. They're Rob Zombie, and they're each $25 at the store, which upon opening them and looking at them, I think they're pretty cool and not a bad price at all to have on your shelf. So $25 each, I think it's a steal. This next piece actually almost came home with me. It was a markdown from one of the vendors, and I think it was only for $3 or so here. But looking at it, it was so cute. Yeah, $3.50, not bad price at all. But once I looked at it a little further, it had a chip in it right here, and I was like, well, I could paint it green or something. But again, I think I would always, my own eyes would just focus on that chip. So I put it back with the rest of the little pumpkins in the patch here, but definitely a cute ceramic figure. Next up, I found a vendor that had some really cool vintage items, and this first one was a probably 1930s to 40s noisemaker, and I love the design on this one with the witch sitting on top of the pumpkin. Upon asking the vendor at the store, because I couldn't see the price, it was $45. And then moving on, I saw a little tiny girly candle poking out there, and love that. I love the Halloween girly candles. Joe and I actually picked up our first Halloween girly candle to our collection last year, and just since then, we've been on the hunt for them. One thing that I noticed with this mall in particular, there was a lot of folk artists like the Bethany Lowe, Joanna Parker, Pollywogs, like all of those brands that I'm not too familiar with. They're newer to me, but I love just seeing that and love seeing them in here with all of their vintage Halloween inspired items. So that was a really cool find for the Waukesha Antique Mall for me. Next up, I found a different kind of unique item. It's a Frankenstein for $29.50, a bubble blower. So it looks like you put in the skull the bubble mix, and then he would blow out bubbles from his wand right there. So that was a cool find that I've never seen before. So here was from 1980. It was a Danbury Mint Norman Rockwell figurine or statue, and upon looking, $8 was not a bad price at all. When I looked online, I saw anywhere from about $15 all the way up to $30, $35 or so was the average price that I could find online. So not a bad price for $8. Here were some Pez dispensers that I found. I think the witch in the middle, she's a little bit more of a modern find. The one on the right, the jack-o'-lantern, that's a little bit of an older find. And last thing here is a probably 1970s to 1980s era pushpin owl. So I just found that unique, but definitely going to show you right now what I ended up taking home with me back to Michigan. Alright, so now that I'm back home, I can show you the two things that I ended up taking back in my bag with me. So the first thing was the Pollywog, and it's actually our first Pollywog to our collection. So I just love the folk art look of it, kind of that vintage Halloween inspired. One nice thing is it reminded me of those paper mache buckets that you would have in this little tiny one here, because they had the same thing with the cutout eyes and the nose and the face. And yeah, at first I looked at it and it almost convinced me. I go, oh my goodness, is that an old, like, fashioned vintage Halloween find? But I'm like, not probably for $45. But again, it's convincing. I like how it looks, and it's gonna look nice to some of our other collectibles that we have on the shelf. Alright, so next up, I ended up taking home that noisemaker that I found. So this was a really cool find. You can actually see upon further investigation and kind of zoom in, you can see it has a little bit of wear and tear, probably where somebody was actually playing with it and using it for its purpose. On the back here, the vendor has on here antique 1920s Art Deco Halloween noisemaker. I did see anywhere online, some people would say it was from the 1930s, so you know, I think it's probably around 1920s, 1930s. Not sure the exact time frame, but I can definitely tell it's from that time era. But a very cool find. I love the design on it. I love, honestly, that I can see that there is some wear and tear on it, because it shows to me that it was actually used. And hey, don't want it perfect, right? You want to show it to where it's in great condition, but I like to see that hopefully at one day, back in the day, a kid or somebody actually used it for its purpose. So I think that's pretty cool. I always like to think when I go antique shopping, like, how many hands did this fall into? who used this, like what's the backstory of every item. So love seeing that. Alright, so you can see these are the 2 items that came home. Glad to have them home, and they made it all in one piece. Together they were probably about $90 pre-discount. I did ask the vendor or the antique shop owner if they would be willing to offer any discounts, and a lot of times if it's an item that's over $20, they will honor a 10% discount. It may vary again depending on the shop that you go into, but this one in particular they did, so I was able to get 10% off of both items, and it brought it down to about $80 for the 2. But honestly, for 1 vintage inspired item, I can honestly say it is vintage now, because 2001, anything over 20 years is considered vintage. And then as well as a 1920s to 1930s era noisemaker. Not bad for $80 to have 2 of these older items. So I hope you enjoyed the video. This is going to do it for this one. Definitely stay tuned to our next couple videos. We're going to have some more antique inspired videos coming up here, as well as probably some spooky adventures coming. Also, help us get to 1,000 subscribers, because once we do, we're going to do a vintage Halloween giveaway. So thank you as always for tuning into our videos, and stay tuned. And remember, Hallowmaniacs, stay spooky.
Ooh, trick or treat.